this is okay. Okay.
And you want me to look directly into the camera for this whole thing?
Yes.
My name is Isaac Kinblade. I am a high school social studies teacher here at the Arts and Communications Magnet Academy of Beaverton, and I will be talking about Abigail Adams teaching somebody how to read. So first of all, Abigail Adams is like one of my favorite people in U.S. history, period, and it is because of her that I hate the expression founding fathers. Abigail Adams is the founding mother of the United States, and she gets like no credit for this, and that just bums me out. So she would marry John Adams in 1764, and the thing I really like about Abigail and John Adams is that they wrote love letters back and forth to each other over the decades. So she writes in one of her letters to her husband John, and at this point John Adams is working as George Washington's vice president. So the story that she writes to her husband to tell him about is about a boy, he's black, and his name is James, and he was working as a servant, and he came to her one day to ask her for help so that he could learn how to read. That was what he wanted to do. And Abigail Adams, being Abigail Adams, says, sure, I'll teach you how to read. And she actually invited him into his home for private lessons, one-on-one in her living room. And then eventually she paid tuition for this boy to go to school. And the tuition was like, it wasn't much, but in any case, it was a very charitable thing from Abigail Adams, and she didn't really think anything big of it until one night she has this neighbor guy come over. She refers to him as Mr. Faxon, and I guess he's like this important pillar of the community. And he comes to her house to express concern and worry that a black boy in a classroom with a bunch of other white boys it's not good for the social order, and it's going to destroy that school. And Abigail Adams didn't buy that for even a second, and she goes at this Mr. Faxon with her questions. So she asks first, well, is there space in this classroom for this boy James? Is there a seat? Is there a table? Is he taking that away from any of those other boys in the room? And Faxon says, no, he's not in the way. And Abigail continues on to say, well, and this boy, James, he has been in the room with white people before, just as a servant or as a musician providing entertainment. There's never been any issue of his being in the same room as all these white kids or white people before has there. And this Faxon guy, he's starting to back up, and he's saying, well, it's not like I have a problem with James being in the school. It's some of the boys that are at the school, they're expressing their concerns, and I'm just the messenger. I'm just relaying this. And Abigail Adams, she just follows up to say, well, who's complaining? Which boys? Why aren't they here? How about they come over and they can explain to me what the big problem is with this boy James in their class? And at this point, according to the letter that she wrote, Faxon surrendered. And he was like, all right, Abigail, you're right. Obviously, you have a bunch of really good points, but Abigail is not done. Hey, Mr. Faxon, you're a Christian. I'm a Christian. Don't our Christian principles require us to do unto others as we would have done to us? Of course, the answer to that question is yes. And Abigail keeps going to say that, preventing a person from getting an education and making something of themselves, that's not just immoral, but that violates the spirit of liberty and equality on which this country was built. And Abigail being Abigail, this is what made her Abigail Adams, is that by the end of this, she sets Faxon straight and he leaves smiling. And the thing that she left him with was to say, and again, if anybody wants to complain to you about a black boy being in that classroom, you have them come and talk to me. I'd love to have a conversation with them about that. And that boy, James, he kept going to school. Which it's a small story. It's not a major event, but I think it's just a really good, it's a good example of what kind of woman Abigail Adams was. She believed very strongly in her principles, and she was not afraid to speak truth to power. And I want to share one quote. This Mr. Faxon is attacking the principle of liberty and equality upon the only ground upon which it ought to be supported. And equality of rights. The boy is a freeman as much as any of the young men. Sorry, I'm going to do this again. This Mr. Faxon is attacking the principle of liberty and equality upon the only ground upon which it ought to be supported, an equality of rights. The boy is a freeman as much as any of the young men, and merely because his face is black, is he to be denied instruction? How is he to be qualified to procure a livelihood? Is this the Christian principle of doing to others as we would have others do to us? Yeah. That was the quote from Abigail Adams, and that was the time she taught a boy how to read and told Mr. Faxon to shut up and mind his own business.
Yay.
The end.